who owns a home that's going to sell for about $500,000, and she intends to buy a rental property and a new primary residence over in the Greeley area. This is not enough proceeds to be able to purchase both of those properties, but there's a few scenarios where she's going to be able to fulfill that requirement, and I have a special friend here to talk to me about how to make that happen for Susan. I'm just going to snap my finger. Well, hey Dave.
Hey Chris, how's it going?
Great.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
So
it's nice that you just showed up. I needed you here to talk about a scenario about a lady named Susan.
I heard you were talking about mortgages, so I thought I would go and show up. That's what I do.
Well, that works out for both of us. So Susan has a home in Loveland. She'd like to sell it. It's worth, I'm going to list it for about $500,000. And
Which means she'll probably net like 600 here in
maybe
July 2021.
maybe, but she might also net about 450 with fees, etc.
Okay.
So she's looking to buy a smaller primary residence over in the Greeley area, and she'd like to own a rental property, and she already has a renter lined up.
Great. Let me ask you a couple questions. Will she have a place to live if she sells the home before she buys either the new primary residence or the new investment property? Or will she need to have some type of a post-occupancy agreement? Or will her purchase contract need to have a contingency upon the sale of the old home? Will we be playing in that space, or are we going to try to eliminate or mitigate those?
When she lists her home and has a contract to buy and sell, the contract to buy and sell is going to require a post-closing occupancy agreement to give her space to fund the loan for one of those properties. And when she gets funded on the sale of her current property, she'll be able to pay cash for one of the properties she'd like to buy. A good question is, which one should she buy first?
Okay, so there's a couple considerations here. If you're just taking proceeds and we're not doing any other type of financing on the property to be sold, like short-term bridge financing through some type of line of credit, then those proceeds can be applied to either, to buy full price cash offer on either the investment or the pri-res, and there's pros and cons to that. When you're buying an investment property and you're getting a mortgage on that, your mortgage interest rate is going to be a little bit higher on an investment property mortgage than it would be on a primary residence. It's considered slightly riskier, and based on risk-based pricing algorithms, you're going to see 1/4 to maybe 0.5% higher in your interest rate. So your financing terms aren't as aggressive on the investment property, whereas on your primary residence, you can get the lowest rate that the market can offer.
So what I hear you saying is, it's the best option is for her to pay cash for an investment property, maybe around the $350,000 area, and that's going to leave her with a chunk of change to be a down payment on her new primary residence.
Yep, absolutely. She can do it in either order, but if she buys the investment property with the cash, she can take the remainder of those proceeds as her 20% down on her primary residence, avoid the PMI, and being a real solid, good loan with the lowest rate we can possibly get her.
Now what's cool about Susan is she owns this home free and clear. So she owns 100% equity on this home. So is there something she can do perhaps to take that equity and transfer it towards a investment property, and then when she sells the home, can she pay off that equity line of credit and then still have some left over her new primary residence?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different things that can come into play with mortgage financing in this space. I would, if I was her, I might consider taking a home equity line of credit, also known as a HELOC, on the property to be sold. I would be pretty transparent with the lender and say, listen, I'm not planning on keeping this HELOC open. I just need this money as a bridge to go and purchase something else for cash while this is waiting to finish on its contract and actually close and fund. So if she has $500K value, she can borrow $400K, $350K, $400K, no problem, pretty easily. Any lender will do that. She'll have a pretty low introductory rate. There'll be a minimal fees compared to a regular mortgage. There will probably be an early termination fee of anywhere from $150 to $300 typically, but that's worth it if it gets you access to the money a lot faster than when you would have it otherwise.
So one thing that would make her is a cash buyer for that investment property.
Correct. She doesn't even have to sell it. She doesn't have to wait for the proceeds, and she can buy at least one of the two properties
That's right.
outright for cash.
And then when she buys when she sells her primary residence in Loveland for $500,000, she's gotten a certain amount of that cash left over after she pays the HELOC, and then that makes her an extremely powerful buyer. She's not a cash buyer necessarily, but she has a huge down payment, and that's going to make her a very eligible and powerful buyer when she goes to buy her new primary residence.
It's going to strengthen her negotiating position, absolutely. One thing that we've seen this year a lot is you have these pre-qualified buyers who maybe don't have a lot of liquidity, who don't have a lot of cash sitting in the bank, and they're qualified for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, whatever it is, but they're under contract for maybe 25, 30, 50, even higher over the list price, and real estate agents, regardless of how you feel about them, I do a pretty good job at determining what the comparable sales should indicate this property's worth. And so when you list it at a certain number and you're under contract for significantly higher, there's a gap where you're under contract, you agreed to buy it for, let's say, $550,000, for example, but it's really only worth $500,000 according to recent comparable sales. If that happens, you have an appraisal gap. And one of the key things that I've found that really strengthens my pre-qualified buyers this year in 2021 is the ability to cover some or all of any concerns around an appraisal gap between the list price and the contract price.
That's right. So just for clarity, an appraisal gap goes like this. You agree to buy a house for, let's say, $320,000, but it appraises at $300,000. So you have a gap of $20,000. In your contract to buy and sell, you can say, we will close an appraisal gap up to the purchase price that we agreed to, or up to $10,000. Whatever you think is best for you is the right answer. You're going to have to talk to your real estate agent about that kind of decision. But what makes Susan a powerful buyer is she now has some liquid assets to be able to apply towards that appraisal gap, so she doesn't have to be as picky about the new primary residence that she's going to buy in her new town.
Correct. And when you're putting that offer in and you're writing in that line saying, hey, we're putting an offer in on this house $20,000 over asking because we're trying to win this contract, one of the natural questions the listing agent's going to ask is she good for the money? And
absolutely.
And that they're going to want to know that. They're going to want to either speak to the lender or they're going to have some other type of proof of funds, and having that really does strengthen your negotiating position as a buyer in this market.
And a lender is going to be able to provide a proof of funds letter, and they can even, correct me if I'm wrong, they can even say how much cash they may have to be able to put towards a deal if the buyer allows them to disclose that information.
Generally speaking, I don't like to disclose the exact dollar figure held in liquid or non-liquid accounts. I simply state, yes, they have adequate funds to cover that amount, or no, they do not have adequate funds to cover that amount. If it's a no, don't call me. Buyer's agent, don't have the listing agent call me if they don't have money. Just saying.
This is one of those scenarios where you're going to have to play it deal by deal, because if we're in a competitive market, we may want to say, yes, we're going to put $100,000 down. $20,000 is delegated to cover that appraisal gap, and my lender has verified that those funds are there to be put towards the deal. So we're wrapping this up. All right, David, what do you do? For the viewers who just showed up in the middle of this video, David, what do you do?
Who does that?
Who are you?
Who goes on YouTube and starts a video halfway through?
Some people don't like the intro. You know?
Fair enough, All right.
So here's the deal. He's David Hooper.
Hi. David Hooper, Academy
He's with
Bank.
Academy Bank. How do people get a hold of you?
Text me, call me, 970-286-9648. Put that in your show notes or in your video links down below.
I'm also going to put a little bit of text right here.
Okay, a little text on the video screen.
Yeah.
So that my number, text or call.
All right, high five. All right, and I am Christopher Hoops with Bliss Realty Group. I'm in Fort Collins. I serve the whole Front Range area. And what I'd like for you to do is hit subscribe, ring the little bell. Go ahead, and if you're on Instagram, hit that little heart. It's right around here somewhere. I don't know where it is actually. It's somewhere around here. And if you have any questions or comments about the scenario we talked about today, about Susan and her sale and purchase of 2 new properties, I would love for your questions or comments in the comments down below. If you have any questions about funding a loan or buying real estate, please reach out to David or myself. And you can reach me at 970-825-4647, Chris at coloradohomegeek.com. You can go to coloradohomegeek.com to look at properties or to get a free property evaluation. It'll be instant. I appreciate you watching the video and I look forward to hearing from you.